I've had some good opportunities from flying from the frozen lake near where I live recently. Before this, we had some really cold weather and created some thick ice, and now it's warm and calm. So I've been flying glow models, electric, and high start gliders. The gliders had either mechanical or viscous DT. The electric and the glow, I had GPS system which could create graphs of the flights. This electric sniffer has a low kV motor, just 1300 kV, and I let it run for 20 seconds to get it up fairly high. It appears if I get into lift, it'll climb to about 140 feet, and then it'll go up a little higher than that in the thermal. I don't seem to hit too many thermals yet out here. I'm not just sure why. But on this particular day I did, and it's interesting to see the pattern of how it made some circles and then it straightens out at times. And it was going straight just before it really got into lift. So I'm thinking maybe it was being sucked into a thermal. And you can see it here on the graph as it starts to go up. And then at the very top, that's when I popped the DT and it came down. Now this is where it landed. It was still short of those trees, but I wasn't just sure. And I knew it was going to drift some, so I didn't want to take any chances. Sometimes it would drift towards the bluff, and sometimes it would drift towards the park on the other side. If it would drift right down the lake, it had a long ways to drift. You could go a mile probably. I guess one thing I discovered, how my depth perception isn't all that great. Normally you think it's farther out than it is, but then different times it turned out it was farther out than I thought it was. On this particular flight, it stayed in pretty close, so I got a good chunk of video so you can see how it flies. It always makes a nice right circle, but then the glide, usually it'll go to the left, although sometimes it'll go to the right. And I think that has something to do with the tissue covering and when it's loose or tight. The sniffer usually lands pretty nice. But here you can see on a couple of flights it went all the way over to the other shore, and I didn't think it was that far out. This came pretty close too. These screenshots are from the BMK GPS app, and you can see where the plane landed by the hearts. This app updates in real time, but it's kind of hard to see the smartphone screen when it's so bright on the ice. And here it must show the paths that you walk. Well, that screw came loose on my motor, so I got out some gliders. So first I flew my retro Gnome with the Texas Timer mechanical DT. This glider didn't get real high on the launch because there was barely any wind when I was trying to launch it. It can be really hard to see when the bluff is in the background at times. So after the retro Gnome, I got out a little dip glider. I was really careful on how far I pulled it back because one time I pulled it back so far that it just went up really, really high. I didn't think it was ever going to come off the line. So this glider, I didn't build it. The person that did a really good job, and the tissue always stays tight, so I assume they pre-shrank it, and that's why I've been trying the pre-shrinking method of the tissue. This has a viscous DT. He used a really long spring on it, and that seems to work pretty well, but I didn't really want to trust letting it go for very long because that glide, it could end up in town. Well, it looks like rain tomorrow, and then I kind of wonder about how much longer this ice is going to be safe.